James Franklin and his coaching staff doing some heavy lifting on the recruiting trail. My goodness, the targets that are set to commit at Penn State, mighty impressive. In addition, of course, to that current number 2 ranking in the Big Ten and in the nation, according to 247 Sports. Of course, it's still early, but the future looks bright as well for Penn State for 2022. Got Marty Leap on the line from Black Shoe Diaries on SB Nation to help us break it all down. Marty, how we doing today?
Good, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. So 3 huge probable commits to come into the fold here in the next week or so. Can you run them down for us?
Yeah, the biggest one, it's going to be on July 22nd, so this upcoming Thursday. 5-star defensive end Dani Dennis-Sutton out of McDonough School in Maryland is set to commit. Throughout his recruitment, really, Penn State has seemed like the front runner here. They're the in-region school. Penn State assigned at least one player out of McDonough, and I think 4 or 5 classes in a row. The director of Penn State's player personnel is a McDonough grad at the school they've dominated at. Georgia and Alabama made this tough. They really did. There was a time where it looked like Dennis-Sutton may have been leaning towards Georgia, but all signs point towards Penn State landing their big fish on Thursday. And make no mistakes about it, that's a big recruiting win for James Franklin. Dennis-Sutton is that kind of elite game wrecker on defense you need if you want to make the college football playoff. And looks like Penn State's going to hold off a late charge here from 2 national powerhouses to get it done. In addition to him, Penn State's defensive back class could be getting some big additions by the end of the month. On July 29th, 4-star safety Christian Driver out of Texas is set to commit, and the Nittany Lions seem to be the leader there. He took an official visit last month. They hold all of the crystal ball predictions on 247 Sports. He's the son of former Green Bay Packers receiver Donald Driver, which actually is what kind of leads to his ties to Penn State, because when his dad was with Green Bay for 2 years, James Franklin was his position coach. And then finally, at the end of the month, coming back in region for Penn State, 3-star, safety KJ Winston out of DeMatha Catholic in Hyattsville, Maryland, which DeMatha is one of the best programs, not just in the region, but in the country for producing talent. The Nittany Lions seem to be in a good spot there with Winston. And, that's, again, one of those commitments for them. It's twofold. A, you're getting a very, very good safety in Winston if the Nittany Lions are the pick. And B, anytime you pull a player out of one of the best high schools in your region, DeMatha Catholic, and you continue to form connections there, that's never a bad thing either.
Yeah, looking at Winston right now, June visits to Maryland, Penn State, and Michigan State. Some people may not be necessarily excited that aren't big, hardcore recruiting people if they just look at the rankings. 43rd rated safety in the nation, about a top 600 to 700 player. But Maryland prime for tremendous high school football. You mentioned the pedigree of the program and the experience. And again, let's understand that not everybody walks in the door as a top 100 player.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of players to go around, and he looks like a tremendous 3-star prospect. When you talk about Sutton, wow, you're talking a top 10 defensive lineman in the country, top 50 player across the board. And as Marty, all you have to do is throw out the term 5-star and it gets everybody's attention. And Driver is obviously a tremendous talent lines, bloodlines, as a top 35 player in the state of Texas as well, and a top 10 to 15 safety in the nation. It sounds like, Marty, from the conversation we had before we started to record, and also some of the things you just said, that you're pretty confident, not like assured on these 3 guys, but they seem to all be in that maybe 75 to 80% guarantee range.
Yeah, I think of the 3, Dennis-Sutton's probably still the one you feel the least comfortable with. But anytime you're battling against Alabama and Georgia for a guy they want, that's always one of those you're not going to feel comfortable till the pen hits paper on the letter of intent type of recruitment. But it definitely seems Penn State's in a good spot to land all 3 of those guys. And, like you said in the opening, currently looking at the second best recruiting class in the country. Probably not going to finish with the second best recruiting class in the country, because Penn State's, if they do land these 3 guys, they're probably looking at having 2 or 3 spots left. But they, they're well on their way to signing a top 5 to 10 class, and it'll be up there with that 2018 class that had guys like Micah Parsons and Jason Oweh as the best class Franklin has signed since coming to Happy Valley.
And that was what I was going to point to in regards to the recruiting ranking right now. Of course, you say it's mid to late July. Got to wait all the way to December. Let's see what commits number one come through. And then everybody else has a lot of work to do, more so than Penn State with the 20 hard commits. But the 20 hard commits obviously speak to the class being that good to a certain extent already, and it's almost entirely complete. So although there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to catch up because they've only got 10 or 12 hard commits right now, and they've got a lot of work to do, and they're going to do some tremendous work, the LSU and Alabamas of the world, still Penn State's going to hold that ranking to a certain extent, you would think, because they do have that type of talent already in the room and locked down, and only a few more spots left.
Yeah, and I think what's most impressive, really, if you look at this recruiting class for Penn State and what they've done so far and what it looks like they're going to continue to do between now and signing day in December, is that there's no reason they should be recruiting at this level right now. If you look at the 2021 class, a lot of misses there. I mean, it was a good class, but not up to the standards that James Franklin has set. And then last season, was a disaster for them on the field. You start 0-5, you finish a sub 500 record. And I think it just really goes to show twofold. One, how important it is for Penn State, even more than, I mean, he says, but every school, but I think with Penn State, it's more important than most schools having those in-person visits, because one thing that James Franklin and his staff really pushes is that family atmosphere. And you can't get that, over Zoom, over the phone, whatever it is. And also, I think with Penn State, because of where it's located, a lot of people don't realize that State College really is one of the best college towns in the country. They just think, oh, it's out in central Pennsylvania, in the middle of the mountains, which is true. However, the town of State College is a terrific college town. I think those two things make it so much more important for Penn State than a lot of schools to have the in-person visits. And I also think this class being so strong is a real testament to some of the early commitments. Guys like Caden Saunders, who might wind up as a 5-star receiver. Offensive tackle Drew Shelton, who's a top 200 guy. Defensive end Ken Talley, who's a top 200, 250 guy. So you have, your 2-3 very firm, very vocal on social media type of recruits who are also extremely highly rated guys that everybody knows about. And that makes your class more appealing to other guys. And that is something that I think Penn State lacked in their 2021 class, was having those kind of real top end talents that people in the recruiting world, other recruits know and can be influential towards those guys. And I just think a lot of credit really needs to go not just to the staff this cycle, but also to the kids in this class, especially for the kids who committed a year and a half ago, and they couldn't take visits, and they held it out and they never backed off those commitments. They didn't visit elsewhere. They've only visited Penn State. A lot of credit goes to those guys for handling it the way they did.
Hey, everybody. We got Marty Leap on the line, breaking down one of the top recruiting classes in the country at Penn State, and it's only looking to get better at this point. You can join Marty and the rest of the staff there at Black Shoe Diaries on SB Nation. Give us a like here on this video. If you're enjoying it, others will as well. So go out on social media and share it, and please subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. July was an amazing yield for Penn State. Give us the highlights. You can run down all the players. You can do it however you'd like. Nicholas Singleton is the guy that everybody was looking for. I think nationally, he's obviously at the top of the board, but man, right below him, Caden Saunders, and on down the list. Yeah,
July was, and like I said earlier, we're probably still looking at Penn State nabbing 2 or 3 more highly rated guys, including their top target this cycle. The rest of the month, July 2021 could go down as one of the best recruiting months in the history of Penn State football. You mentioned Nicholas Singleton. The kid is just an absolutely elite running back. He's an in-state product, which always makes a difference too. This was a recruitment early on. Penn State did not appear to be in it as much as you would think for an in-state kid, especially with how well Penn State's produced running backs dating back to Saquon Barkley. But the staff fought their butts off. They got back into it. He took an official visit to Notre Dame, came real close to committing to Notre Dame after the visit. The staff was able to back him off of that, and they swung around and won the recruitment. And that's a big win for Penn State. Like I said, not just the optics of the in-state kid, but also he's as elite a running back as it gets. Notre Dame wanted him, Alabama wanted him, Georgia wanted him, and he chose the Nittany Lions. Staying with running back, they also added 4-star Katron Allen out of IMG Academy in Florida. Again, he's one of those players, kind of like Winston. Not only is it awesome to add Allen, who on 247 Sports is the 132nd best player in the country, anytime you get a player out of IMG and you can continue to make connections down at a school like that, that's a big thing. And it was a big month also on the defensive line for the Nittany Lions. They added 4-star defensive tackle Zane Durant out of Florida. 3-star defensive tackle Caleb Artis out of New York City, but he's a guy that I know a lot of people in recruiting services expect to shoot up to be a 4-star if he repeats what he did last season to get on the field this fall. And 4-star defensive end Tyrese Fearbury was a huge recruiting win for them. Defensive end's a big need this cycle. They have Tally, they now have Fearbury, and like I said, it looks like they're going to add Dennis-Sutton to the mix. Fearbury's a 4-star kid from Pittsburgh. He plays in the City League in Pittsburgh, and the City League in Pittsburgh, since Pat Narduzzi has gotten to Pitt, has been if Pitt wanted the kid, they got him, and they didn't this time. Penn State, I think, as weird as it may sound, because I think a lot of people don't always put Pitt and Penn State in the same tier in terms of recruiting, and and not to knock on Pitt or anything, but they shouldn't, because they're not the same tiered programs anymore the way they were 30, 40 years ago. But Penn State had to battle for this one, and this was a recruitment I don't think very many people thought anyone other than Pitt had a shot in. And to Penn State's credit, they blew Fearbury away on his official visit. He was in town for the spring game back in April. I mean, it was still during the dead period, so you couldn't technically visit, but he was there for the game, really enjoyed the atmosphere at Beaver Stadium. And that was a big recruiting win for the Nittany Lions. Fearbury is one of the better defensive ends in the region this cycle, a 4-star guy, a lot of length. That was a big win as well. So, yeah, July's been awesome for the Nittany Lions on the recruiting trail. And like we said, it looks like it's not done yet.
As you mentioned, Marty, the relationships are enormous. I don't think most people value that on the outside. It's all about, okay, who won national championships, who's competing for national titles, who's got the facilities, who's got the brand name, so forth. And Penn State has most of that going for it, even off a 4-5 season. But basically what I'm getting to is the momentum of recruiting, and follow along with me, and you can speak to this much better than I can. But if you're the only guy of a certain caliber that really loves that school, let's say you're Nicholas Singleton and nobody else of your caliber has committed to Penn State, and even if you completely love the school, have the relationships, everything feels great about the situation, but yeah, they were 4-5 last year, and man, they got like the 38th best class in the nation right now. Nobody else of my 4 and 5 star ranking is committing right now. Is this really headed in the right direction? Even though I like it, versus, okay, 4 and 5 is probably a blip on the radar, because look at what they did before that, and look at this class. It's not just me; all these other guys are coming on board, and then it just builds the momentum.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor. You see that pretty frequently in recruiting. A Penn State example of that. This goes back quite a few years now, but in the 2005 recruiting class, Penn State was able to land Derek Williams, who at the time was the number 1 player in the country. And once Williams committed, that opened up the floodgates to a lot of other very highly touted guys coming on board. And then that 2005 season, you saw a lot of those guys playing as freshmen. That was a team that won the Big Ten, went on to beat Florida State in the Orange Bowl, and kind of really pulled Penn State out of that 3-year doldrum they'd been in the early part of the century. And ever since then, they've always recruited well. They've always played well. Having that definitely is a factor. And I think that's a big factor in this class for Penn State is you see – your Nicholas Singletons, your Caden Saunders, your Drew Alars, Ken Tallies, Drew Shelton, whoever it may be, so many 4 borderline 5-star type of talents in this class. Like you said, other guys want to go there because, yes, guys have different reasons they want to go to college. They want to get ready for the NFL. They want their degree. They want this. But a big part of that is they want to win. They want to have a chance of winning a national championship. And if you see a recruiting class that is filling up with these guys and is in the top 5, 10 nationally, that team's going to have the talent when you're there to potentially win a national championship. So that is definitely a huge factor in all of this as well.
I also think there has to be a certain factor that hits home with certain players, not all, that, okay, this school, this program has the potential to do that, but they haven't in a long, long time. Recently, they haven't been able to get it over the hump. So do I want to go to Clemson or Ohio State, where I'm kind of in the line of a ton of other guys that have done something special and I don't really stand out, versus this is a school, I'm not going to go to Tulsa because they don't have the ability to do it. This school has the ability to do it. This guy, I believe in him and his staff, and they've got the resources to do it. But if I'm on that team that gets them over the hump and does something special, then I've made a name for myself even more.
Yeah, I definitely think that is. And that is something Penn State I know uses in the recruiting pitch. James Franklin will point out to guys, say, hey, look how close we have been. You can come here and help be that guy that pushes us over the edge, that helps us get to the top of that mountain, helps us finally break through the college football playoff barrier. Because, I mean, Penn State's been right there most since 2016, every year except for last year. They've been right there on the brink of making the college football playoff. Get one or two bounces, go a different direction. They could have 2 or 3 playoff berths in the last 5 or 6 seasons. And I also know one thing that kind of builds off of the similar to that James Franklin uses, and it works, is he makes it very clear to recruits that, he wants to be the first African-American head coach to win a national championship. And, if you're, this is something personally, obviously I cannot relate to, but I'm sure if you're a young African-American man, that sounds appealing to you because you know what, this guy can help him make history that way, So I know those are things that are big recruiting polls for schools. And I know there are ones with Penn State that they have to use on the trail. And I think, like you said, yes, going to Alabama, going to Clemson, wherever it might be, and winning a national championship, I'm sure those players are going to love every second of it and never forget that. But if you can be on that team that won Penn State's first national championship since 1986, that got them to the playoff for the first time, that's even more of an accomplishment because you kind of helped break through that barrier for them.
No doubt about it. Penn State doing quite the job on the recruiting trail. And we got Marty Leap on the line from Last Shoe Diaries, SB Nation, to help us break it down. Marty, we appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thanks for having me. Always enjoy it.